So our last speaker today, unfortunately, is not able to be here for visa issues. So it's Dominic Kao, and he's going to be presenting the effects of badges and avatar identifications on play and making in educational games. Thanks.
Hi, so I'm Peter Mahorter. I'm one of Dominic Kao's lab mates, and this is Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle Olson. I'm a PhD student at the MIT Imagination, Computation, and Expression Laboratory. As we mentioned, we're here to present on behalf of Dominic Kao and our PI Fox Harrell on his research on the effects of badges and avatar identification on play and making in educational games.
So hello everybody, my name is Dominic Kao. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be at CHI this year because of a work visa issue. The ironic thing is that I'm actually Canadian. Okay. I'm not able to go back to Canada for this. But I just want to thank Peter Mahorter and Danielle Olson for agreeing to co-present this video on my behalf. And so the title of my talk is The Effects of Badges and Avatar Identification on Play and Making in Educational Games. So the rough outline for today is going to be motivation, system, experiment, results, findings, and conclusion. So why study badges? So one answer is that they're everywhere. Historically, their physical counterparts come in the form of such things as ribbons, medals, and trophies. Nowadays, they appear in online systems ranging from education to commerce to games. Researchers have found that badges increase user activity, student contributions, they can promote higher grades, and enjoyability. Badges can also affect behavior, for example, on Stack Overflow, engagement, for example, in forums on MOOCs, and productivity, for example, in the case of Wikipedia contributors. But one thing that you'll note is that virtually all badge representations are representations of achievement. So while badges are typically viewed as a type of gamification element, here we're working to extend that definition into the areas of things like student identity. For instance, a number of studies have demonstrated that being personally associated and having role models is crucial, even affecting career choices in mathematics and computer science. As such, we believe that badges representing concepts that are associated with the self, or badges representing relevant role models, could enhance motivation, etc. So in this study, we not only look at achievement badges, but also badges representing personal interests and role models. So why study avatars? Avatars are also everywhere. They're the avatars we play in online games. They're the user profiles that we socialize and network with online. Avatar identification, or the degree to which we identify with our avatar, can improve game enjoyment, health outcomes, motivation, flow, trust in others, self-esteem, game loyalty, learning interest, game appreciation, etc. So one of the central questions of my work is, do things like badges and avatar identification also affect people in the context of not only game play, but game making? So for example, when users create their own game level. And the answer is that badges and avatar identification have significant effects on game making. And avatar identification even promotes higher quality of created game levels. That's just one of the things that we'll talk about today. So in terms of the big picture, participants played a game, then created their own custom game level. We found that different badge types cause increases in different outcomes. Separately, we found that avatar identification promoted player experience, intrinsic motivation, programming self-efficacy, time spent playing and making, and created game level quality. What was particularly different about this study is that we looked at alternative badge types and studied all of this in both a play and making context. Here's a diagram of the experimental setting. The two main components are seen on the left and the right, a game and an editor. So I'm going to start with the game. This is the very first level. This is level 6, when people are introduced to loops. This is level 12, when people are using both loops and conditionals. So for the editor, we start with just a very basic blank map. And so this is a starting screen. And just so it's clear, the point of the editor is to make maps that are playable in a similar way to the ones that you just saw. This is a built-in image search. Here the user is searching for an image of a cat. We've just placed the cat from the image search and scaled it up. At the top is a play button where I can test my map. Now we're testing a map that we just created. Once a user is happy with their map and ready to share it, they just need to fill in these 3 fields, and the system will automatically create a web page based on their level. This is a generated website based on those 3 fields a user filled in. The user's avatar is on the right, and the filled-in information comes out as speech bubbles when the links on the right are clicked. There's a green play button at the bottom where if a visitor clicks it, will bring them right into playing the game level. And there's a feedback form for people to leave comments. So what have people actually created using the editor? I'm just going to quickly show some of the maps that people create in this experiment to give you a sense of the possibilities. This one is called Home Road and has lots of different types of assets. This one is called Garden and is an extremely long horizontal map like those in side-scrolling games. This one is called Picnic Time. This one is called Summer Days and creates this illusion of a horizon. And many of the maps are also based on outer space. And so now that we've covered the experimental setting, I'm going to move on to describing the experiment itself now. We first had to come up with the badges themselves, which was a relatively long process of testing and validation. Let's go over some of the more important phases of this process. We first asked participants to name a set of interests and scientists. We categorized the interests. Each scientist and interest was then ranked by how often they were mentioned. The set of final scientists was partly taken from the most often mentioned scientists, and an additional subset were researcher curated for diversity. The set of final interests were obtained by having users rate the most often mentioned interests. We took the highest rated interests and categories of interest as our final set. We then Googled each interest and scientist to find badge images. We took the first image result and 2 more image results at random from the first 10. We normalized image sizes and made them all black and white to control for potential color confounds. Badge images were then ranked, and we took the highest ranked badge images. For achievement badges, we created or found 5 possible achievement badge images for each game level. These badges were ranked and given captions. We chose what we felt were the best captions. We then performed several validation checks between badge types, such as average number of caption words between the 3 badge types. We normalized the image style between badge types. We also ensured that average pixel intensity between badge types was roughly similar. We then checked that badge images still represented the person or thing that we wanted them to represent. That the final badges in badge form still represented what we intended them to represent. And that the badges were apt for the specific game environment they were being used in. And so all of this yielded a set of interests, scientists, and achievements with corresponding visual badges for each of them. So this is what the badges look like. They were selected at the end of each level as a reward for completing the level. There was also a no badges condition in which no badges were present. Participants were randomly assigned to one of these badge conditions at the beginning. This is how the badges appeared in-game at the end of a level. This is how the badges appeared in the editor. So overall, we had more than 2,000 participants from Amazon's Mechanical Turk. We measure engagement using the player experience of need satisfaction scale, or the PENS, and the intrinsic motivation inventory, or the IMI. We measure programming self-efficacy, also using a validated scale. We measure participant identification with their virtual representation. This is done using the player identification scale, or the PIS, which breaks down identification into 3 components. Similarity identification, or how similar you are to your avatar. Embodied identification, or how much you are your avatar. And wishful identification, or how much you view your avatar as an ideal version of yourself. Finally, we also measure participants' created game level quality and the time they spent. So how did we measure created game level quality? We hired 3 QA testers that first went through a training period of approximately 2 days. The QA testers then each rated the more than 2,000 game levels. On average, this process took approximately a month for each QA tester. So in terms of the overall protocol, players first spent a minimum 4 minutes creating their avatar. Participants then played Mazzy for as long as they wanted. Participants were then introduced to the editor. They were required to spend at least 10 minutes creating a game level. After 10 minutes, they could exit at any time. So what were our results? For badges. And before beginning, I should mention that overall the choice condition was not very beneficial, possibly because it just resulted in too many possible choices. So on the left-hand side, we have a graph for different measures in the game, and on the right, different measures in the editor. We found that personal interest and role model badges promoted avatar identification. The achievement and role model badges promoted player experience, as well as intrinsic motivation. And that role model badges promoted programming self-efficacy. So the takeaway here is that role model and achievement badges are effective at enhancing the digital experience. In terms of avatar identification, we ran a linear hierarchical regression. And what this does is it takes a predictor variable and sees how much variance it can predict in a dependent variable. And here the predictor variable is avatar identification, and the dependent variables are all the outcomes we're studying. And so we found that avatar identification can significantly predict player experience, intrinsic motivation, self-efficacy, the time spent in both the game and the editor, and even significantly predicted the quality of created game levels, as rated by those 3 QA testers. However, interestingly, wishful identification actually negatively predicts quality. So higher wishful identification with your virtual representation results in lower map quality. So on average, our significant R-squared values predict 7.4% of variance in player experience, intrinsic motivation, and self-efficacy, which is a medium effect size, and 1.8% of variance in time spent, and 3.3% of variance in created game level quality, which are medium to small effect sizes. And so the takeaway here is that avatar identification is able to promote everything from engagement to self-efficacy to the time spent to the quality of created artifacts. And so overall, we found that different badges positively affected different outcomes, and that avatar identification promoted virtually all outcomes studied in both play and making. One caveat, however, is that wishful identification was actually negatively correlated to map quality. Wishful identification is correlated with lower psychological well-being. However, wishful identification may be beneficial for self-esteem. And so more work is needed here on the differential impacts of different types of identification. Our results suggest role model badges are effective. We might imagine scientific games that leverage the crowd, like Foldit, massive open online courses, or digital learning platforms as being possible beneficiaries of these badges. Other domains might also benefit from these badges. For instance, in a business setting, maybe you'd get a role model badge of Steve Jobs. Or in a politics setting, maybe you'd get a role model badge of Barack Obama. We show that avatar identification can promote a variety of outcomes. We further extend previous work by showing that avatar identification can impact the quality of created levels. It remains an open question as to whether the production of other artifacts can also be similarly affected through identification with an on-screen representation. For example, writing an essay, programming an application, or designing a graphic. In this study, we've looked at how badges and avatar identification impact both play and making in an educational game. We found that certain badges can promote avatar identification, namely personal interests and role model badges, player experience, namely achievement and role model badges, intrinsic motivation, also achievement and role model badges, and programming self-efficacy, namely role model badges, during both the game and the editor. Avatar identification promoted player experience, intrinsic motivation, self-efficacy, and the total time spent playing and making. Avatar identification also promoted other meaningful in-editor activity, such as playtesting time, etc., and led to significantly higher overall quality of the completed game levels, as rated by 3 QA testers. Here, we've conducted a first study on alternative badge types and a first study of badges and avatar identification in a making context. And so Peter and Danielle have graciously offered to help answer questions, but if there's any kind of follow-up, don't hesitate to contact me.